Well, we're spending tens of billions of pounds, but I've added to that still further by making savings elsewhere in government and, crucially, selling some of the buildings and the land that government doesn't need now to build for the future. And this is all about Britain taking the bold decisions to provide security and jobs for the next generation, to make sure we've got the railways and the roads and the runways that are going to power our economy going forward. And we've not been very good at that as a country under all governments. We've made a start now, and there's a lot of road building and railway building going ahead, but I want to continue that with this independent infrastructure commission. And you can't get agreement on these things if you just try and do it as a Conservative Party or a Labour Party. So I'm trying to create a cross-party consensus, and I've got an independent chair now in Andrew Adonis, who's giving up being a Labour peer, and he's going to chair this body, and that will help us as a nation come to these collective decisions.
What does it mean sort of in practical terms as well? Then you talk about powering through. Will it make it more difficult for perhaps councils and residents to stop major planning issues?
Well, let's take a good example. Here I am in Manchester, and there's a lot of talk about a high-speed link we could build between Manchester and Leeds that would dramatically improve transport on a corridor that everyone knows is badly congested. This infrastructure commission, one of its first tasks is going to be to look at that problem. And yes, look, if we have a plan that this commission comes forward with and the democratically elected government is in favour of it, then we can get on and build it. And of course, there's always going to be people who don't like new building, don't like new roads, don't like new railways near them. But the truth is, if we hadn't built railways in the past or motorways in the past, that would have been a disaster for this country, and it would be a disaster for this country if we stop building now. So,
for example, let's just take one if we would. Somebody's house is on that corridor. What happens to them?
Well, look, we've got to make a decision on where to put new high-speed rail lines. Once the route is decided, obviously some people are affected. Their homes are affected. We pay generous compensation to them. But in the end, I ask you the question, if we had never built the M25 or the M6 or the Channel Tunnel or the West Coast Main Line, where would we be as a country? And all of those projects were bitterly contested at the time. And it's a lesson for us as a country that the future favours the bold. It favours countries in this world who take these decisions to provide jobs and living standards for the future. And I'm determined, whether it's building the right infrastructure or getting our public finances into shape or getting us out of the banking system, as I've just announced with Lloyds Bank, we're going to take the decisions that deliver security and opportunity for working people in this country.
And does that mean as well, you talked about where some of the money will come from, getting money from foreign companies as well to build this infrastructure?
Well, look, I'm all in favour of attracting investment from around the world to Britain. And the exciting thing is that Britain is now one of the #1 destinations for that investment. And indeed, the north of England, where I am today, is one of the #1 destinations in England for that investment. That's great news. I'll tell you why. If there's Chinese money coming in, or American money, or French money, or whatever it is coming into this country, that's money we don't have to stump up as taxpayers.
Yes,
and that's a good deal for Britain. So we want to carry on making those investments.
You mentioned the sort of northern powerhouse, that idea. What about for the people in Redcar, who's the company that they were employed by is not from this country, 1,700 of them now without jobs?
Yeah, and of course that is an absolutely tragic situation. We worked with the company to see if there was an alternative. The truth is steel mills are closing all around Europe and all around the world at the moment as the demand for steel drops away. So what can government do in a situation like that? We can absolutely step in there with a huge package of support for the local community in Teesside affected by this terrible decision. We're putting £80 million in to help grow businesses there, to help retrain people, to give people financial support when they lose their job there. So I think that's a great example of a country having the resources to help when you have an individual tragedy like the closure of a steel mill. But it's in the context, and you can only afford that as a country, of an economy that is growing, creating many millions of jobs over the last couple of years and many millions of opportunities, therefore, for working people, including those who haven't had work.
Let's talk about working people. Let's talk about plans, cuts as well to tax credits. We have an example at the BBC. Rosa Walden, a single mother of two, works full-time, says she's going to lose 10% of her income, around £2,600, two children aged 12 and 7, doesn't get any financial help from their father. She's facing cuts to her tax credits. Are you in danger of hurting people like her who are striving to work?
Well, I want to help Rosa and families like her who are working hard for our country's future. And what I'm offering is a new settlement, lower welfare bills, but also lower taxes and a higher wage bill with a new national living wage. And it comes as a package, along with other things like free childcare. And it means our country lives within its means. That's the economic security I can offer Rosa. We don't have a welfare bill this country can't afford, but she'll see higher wages, she'll see help with childcare if her children are the right age, and she'll see lower tax bills. So it comes as a package, and when you put it together as a package, that's what it was in the budget I presented, then the average working family with someone working full-time on the minimum wage is better off, and not just a little bit better off, but over £2,000 a year better off.
Interesting to see you there, and I understand from speaking to our correspondents at least there that so much of the talk, backstage as it were, is about leadership. How do you feel making that speech about your role?
Look, I feel completely focused on doing this job as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Just think of this interview. We've been talking about building the infrastructure Britain needs. We've just announced a few minutes ago this big sale of Lloyds Bank to the public, to people watching this programme, to the small investors in our country who put money into the banks when they were bailed out under the last Labour government, now getting something back. We've just talked about these important decisions to make sure that people's living standards are higher. You know, that is my job, and that's a huge amount that I've got to keep focused on, and I am absolutely focused on delivering, you know, the security, the stability and the opportunity for working people, because if we don't do that, you get insecurity, instability, a lack of opportunity, and that would be a tragedy for Rosa and all the other people watching this programme.